Hello, this is Call My Bluff with the man who trained Baron Munchausen, Frank Muir.
Evening. Both my guests tonight are new to the game, which is nice. And my first is an award-winning biographer, and she's a critic and a journalist, and it's Victoria Glendinning. My second guest is a rather distinguished actor who's had a huge success in television recently, but on the other side, so I mustn't mention the name of the show. But tonight he hasn't got his brass hat on. It's Timothy West.
And in the blue corner, the captain of the SWATs, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening, and proud indeed to be captain of a team which includes, on my left, Sue Cook. And on my right, that excellent actor, Michael Jayston.
Enough of the pleasantries. Let's get on with the work. The first word appeared, well, two words really. Well, it's one with a hyphen, co, no, and as you may recall, Frank and co will define co, no, three different ways. One of the definitions is true. That's the one, of course, that Arthur and co look for, and the other two are no good. So, co, no, off you go.
I've suddenly got a bit worried. Are you Arthur, or have you ever been a Zen Buddhist?
Not yet.
Ah. Well, this is a Zen Buddhist thingy, because I in fact, have difficulty in filling in a license application form or understanding the questions. But if the Zen Buddhists wish to test their mental application, they are given a kono to solve. And the whole point about kono is it's a riddle which is logically insoluble. And one of the most abstruse of these is a rather charming name, if I can remember it. It's called The Paradox of the Three Hurdles of Hang Lon.
Perfectly ghastly.
But it's logically insoluble. What do they have to say? Do they say, I give up, or...?
Well, they sort of sit cross-legged and look at each other and hope that a silent period comes on.
Yes, I was just trying to be helpful, you know, Frank. You can fill in the detail. Timothy West's turn now.
No, Kono is a southeasterly wind which blows across the Gulf of Siam regularly at the time of the spring equinox. And it is so regular and so predictable that Siamese fishermen have taken to the habit of laying up their boats when the equinox approaches and stopping work until the wind has abated itself.
OK, right, now what does Victoria Glendinning tell us?
Well, Kono is a board game played with counters, and it's a traditional board game of Korea. And like most board games, it's pretty uneventful. All you have to do is move your counters into the squares vacated or by other people's counters. It's a board game.
That's why they're called board games.
Because everybody's so very bored, yes.
Tell that to Korchnoi. I don't know about uneventful. Anyway, this is what they say. It is a sort of a wind. It's this Korean board game, and it is a logically insoluble riddle from I can't quite remember where, but Arthur, you probably do. He chooses.
There we are. Now, Timothy's wind.
Would you rephrase that?
I don't go for your wind, really. Frank, on and on you went with the dreadful Zen Buddhist thing. It was simply appalling. And, of course, it may well be right. But I think, on the whole, we are of one mind here. That it's Victoria's Korean board game.
Oh, she did say it was the uneventful board game. True or bluff, Victoria? It's a bullseye. Yes, we were all in one mind. It is a Korean board game.
Beginner's luck.
Well, now we have another word. Manul, and Arthur will tell you about this.
A manul is the native name on the island of Tahiti for a meeting place. It's a sort of communal hut, presumably where the Tahitian Women's Institute gather. for their monthly meetings. And it's a thatched affair, and the eaves slope down to within about 4 feet of the ground, but it's very, very high in the middle, a sort of spire-like central pole, which goes up to about 40 feet.
No.
Yes.
They can be very tall, of course, in Tahiti, can't they?
That's why they have this very, very high centrepiece.
It all seems to fit in somehow, doesn't it? Let's ask Michael Jayston now. What does he say?
A manul is a primitive stone implement used by Stone Age man and presumably Stone Age woman. It was a smooth oval stone used for grinding cereals and other foodstuffs, and it was also used as a doorstop.
We use a piece of wedgewood.
What?
Now whose turn? Yes, Sue Cook.
Well, it's actually pronounced manual, not Manuel. That's not a Spanish waiter, it's manual. And it's a kind of liquid which is distilled from the resin of certain hardwood trees, and rather like ambergris is, it's used to make scents and perfumes. I think what might help you to clinch this is that the chemical name is bicyclic diterpenoid alcohol, which sounds ghastly, but it does actually make ladies smell very nice in the end.
They say then that it's this stone implement, that it's a constituent of scent, it's the basis of scent, and it's this Tahitian meeting house for the Tahitian WI or thereabouts now. Frank, choose one of those.
I'm worried about art and this 40-foot-high hut.
If it were lower, would it not worry quite so
It
much?
wouldn't worry me quite as much, because I can't think why it's that high. It's not to let the snow roll off it, is it? Do they dance on each other's shoulders 8 high or something? Oh, yeah, forget it. Stone primitive interval, man tool. I think we're being rused there, don't you? Or the scents. How would a scent be called manul or I don't know. I think it's Sue Cook.
You think it is? She said that it was the constituent of scent.
Yes.
Let's see. Was she teasing you? Sue, own up. You were right. Manul is the basis of scent, one of the bases that you can make scent out of or upon. What's this? A stramazon, I would call it. Timothy West, your turn.
A stramazon, like the caricada or the passata, is a stroke, an offensive stroke, made very offensive sometimes, made by a sword or a cutlass. And the stramazon is actually a vertical stroke at your opponent's head, and if you know what you're doing, it's probably fatal.
Right. Now, Victoria.
A stramazon is a kind of very high, elaborate Mexican saddle to go on a horse. In fact, it should really be pronounced ramazon. And it was used for very grand dignitaries in Mexico to go in processions. And sometimes they had, a stramazon would have sort of brocaded sides and elaborate cushions, and sometimes even a kind of balcony thing over the top. A very elaborate saddle for a horse.
Right, Frank.
Its stramazon is an ancient, poetic word for that shimmering curtain of shifting lights in northern skies called the, I can't spell it, but it's called the Aurora Borealis. And it is mentioned in literature. Tennyson. Tennyson, you know, of course, The Mort of D. Arthur, Tennyson's poem. And while yet he held the torch, swung in an arch, it burnt like the stramazon of Arctic night.
What was he doing swinging it in an arch, I wonder?
I would rather not answer that.
Right.
For reasons which will become clear later.
Well. So they say it's sort of aurora. It is the poetic way of describing the Aurora Borealis. It's a Mexican saddle, and it's a specially vicious sort of sword stroke. And Michael Jayston has his choice of those.
Well, I know Amazon in Spanish means a woman rider, so I'm going to discount Victoria's for that reason, because it sounds too much like a cross between a female rider on a horse. And also, I think if I knew my Mort d'Arthur, I would know whether that was true or not either. I'm going to discount Frank's as well. I don't know my Mort d'Arthur, but I'll take a guess that it's not in there. I'm going to go for Tim's, the sword, the stroke of a sword.
That's what he said. True or bluff, he owns up. Yea, verily. A stramazon describes a particular blow or pass with the sword. What we have here is weir or wheer, I don't know. Michael, your turn.
Whir. Whir. And I pronounce it with that kind of vehemence because it is a word of command. Whir. And the pronunciation varies from district to district. Is a command that a shepherd shouts at his sheep. He uses it when driving the flock from one place to another. A repeated whir, whir, to get them to gee up. Exactly. Or to get them to move on. Whir.
Yeah, right. Now, Sue.
Well, whir is actually a relic of the Anglo-Saxon language. It's an adjective and it means proud and haughty or sort of arrogant demeanour. And the word is first recorded, sorry to bring literature up again, but if you know the 10th century epic poem Beowulf, do you?
Backwards.
All 3,000 lines of it?
Unfortunately, not forwards.
Well, if you knew it all 3,000 lines, you'd find that the word whir does appear in that. It's Anglo-Saxon.
Righty-ho. Now it is Arthur's turn.
A whir is a noose or a halter, properly made of hazel twigs, bound together, Frank. But it has been known to be made of willow twigs. And up in about 1750 in Wales, particularly in Monmouth, they used these whirs, I'm afraid, to hang criminals with or from.
Well, then, it is that particular sort of noose. It is the command of a shepherd urging the dog on, or backwards, or forwards, or sideways, and it also means proud, haughty. Timothy, your choice.
Well, it doesn't sound to me like a Welsh word, and I always think that anybody who challenges you about Beowulf is onto a fairly good wicket. I've heard shepherds cry other things to their sheep, but I think in balance, I think probably Michael's shepherd's cry is the one.
You think so? It was indeed Michael Jayston who said it. He has to own up. True or bluff? Yes, indeed. Whir is what shepherds go round saying to sheep. If you've ever wondered, now you know. Glassock is the next word. Victoria Glendinning.
A glassock is a relative of the codfish. It's one of the codfish family, and it's a kind of local regional name for this particular relative called a coalfish. And it's called a coalfish because when you handle it, a sort of black deposit comes off on your hands. And glassock isn't the only name for this coalfish. In other parts of England, it could be called a blocken or a moolfish or a black pollack. But a glassock, it's all the same.
My dear, good heavens.
Right. Frank.
Hello. A glasshook is really a glossing jack. And I'm not taking questions on this definition because there are gaps in my knowledge. It's a glossing jack, which is really, it's a circular piece of bevel plate glass with a handle. And it's used for polishing leather. Why polish leather? little bit of wax, and zoom, 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 circular motion, and you polish the leather.
Okay, so now, Timothy West, his go.
Glassocks were the followers of the Reverend James Glass, who in 1728...
I wouldn't do any more.
Was the... No, I must tell them. Was the founder of a religious sect, a particularly militant religious sect within the Church of Scotland. And I don't think in a family programme like this one should go into the details of the beliefs and practices of this sect, but suffice to say that in 1731 the Reverend James Glass was unfrocked, and quite right too.
All put a stop to, was it? Well, it's they say that it's something for polishing leather, should you want to, kind of a fish, and this religious sect. So, Sue Cook, has her choice.
Lucky Sue. Come on, Chuck.
Well, all right, I'll have to say something. The codfish sounded so likely with the black deposit coming off on your hands and all that in a way I'm inclined to discount it. On the other hand, the Reverend James Glass sounded so unlikely that I think I'll still discount it. So,
feminine logic.
I think that sort of leaves me reluctantly with Frank's glossing jack or whatever it was for polishing leather. Was that right? I think I'll go for that.
You're going for old Frank's polishing, Jack.
Change your mind.
True or
No,
bluff?
well,
Frank got to own up now. No, wasn't old Frank that time. No. Who gave the true definition? Let's see. We must know. There.
Oh, my word.
well, I did say it sounded like
It was the fish. It was the fish that goes under other names in other places. Now, pongal is the next word. Sue Cook tells you about it.
Well, I'm probably telling you what you know already. The Pongal is, of course, that very flat, bare plain in northeast Hungary near the border of Romania. You probably know that. It's very flat, very treeless, 800 miles square. And the reason it's so bare, really, is that there's certain mineral salts in the soil, which mean that really nothing grows in it. So it remains flat and bare and probably will do and has done for years. That's the Pongal.
What a sad story.
Let us now hear from Arthur Marshall.
The Pongal is the New Year festival of the Hindus. Well, really. At a time when they move from one to the other with cries of, Happy Pongal. And I'm glad to tell you that it coincides with the new crop of rice. And one of the great points of the festival, the ceremonial, is the boiling up of the first boiling of rice.
Well, right, yes, who knows? Could be very exciting. Michael's turn now.
A pongal was a coin, it's now obsolete, which was a currency in New Guinea in the Pacific, and it was 100th part of a kyat, K-Y-A-T. Further information is that in 1878, there were 5 pongal charged on any ship that was moored in Port Moresby.
Well, they say it's a Hindu festival. It's a treeless plain in Hungary, and it is a sort of a coin. So, Victoria, your choice.
Well, I just don't believe Arthur today. He's just not convincing me today.
Oh, my dear.
I know it's terrible.
Oh,
We won't let it come between us. And I don't think I believe... I think I believe Sue. I think it's this plain in northeast Hungary where nothing grows.
You don't want to say anything about the third definition? It does seem rather pointed to leave it out. I mean, you know...
Yes, it was no offence was meant at all.
Quite so. Quite so. You just didn't think much of it, I know. So, you're choosing Sue's definition.
Yes.
Yes, that was the treeless plain in Hungary. True or bluff? No. That's called something quite different. Who gave the true definition?
what about all that scoffing? and
Yes,
all the rest?
indeed. There. It is indeed. A pongal is a Hindu festival, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Yes, well, they'll never stamp it out, though. Oborek is the next word, and it's Frank to define it.
Oberek. Oberek is an ancient Egyptian measurement of length about a third longer than a royal cubit.
Then
would
a royal what?
Cubit.
Oh, yes.
Nothing to do with building bridges. It's a cubit. It's a third longer than a royal cubit, because it is in fact the diagonal of a square, each side of which measures a cubit. And in modern English lineage, it is 14.08 inches.
Inches aren't very modern, are they? I thought it was metres now. However, I know I must not stir the pot. I mustn't do it.
Is that all? Have you finished?
I can give you a few centimetres if I can have a moment with my calculator.
I think we should pass on and invite Timothy West to have a go.
In the 1880s, the oberek was, I think, far the most popular of the Polish national dances. It is a kind of very lively, very vigorous mazurka, and Chopin, of course, wrote a lot of music that which was very nice to dance the oberek too. I think his Opus 56 number 2 will spring to mind.
And the opposites are
Yes. It seems to have done. The audience were nodding appreciatively.
Wake up!
Victoria, your turn.
Oberek is something that keeps the feet of Siberian peasants warm in that long, cold winter. It's a domestic flue, not the illness, but like a pipe of hot air that goes under the floor of their houses or huts and channeling the heat from some great central furnace elsewhere in the village. And sometimes they bore holes in the floor and have a little grating and put their feet over it so they can sit with their feet over the oberek, keeping warm.
It is then an ancient Egyptian measure about 14.5 inches long. A flue that you can warm your feet over, and it is a very vivacious Polish dance. Arthur has his choice.
Frank's was so detailed, you did do it well.
I remember it.
I can't believe an Egyptian length is called an oberek. I really can't. Well, now, these wild Polish mazurkas, of course, it could well be that. But the Siberian foot warmer, the flue, sounds so totally impossible and dotty. Why should they call it anyhow? Victoria, we think it's you. We
She
are
did say
as
that.
one here.
Own up now, Victoria. True or bluff?
Oh!
Oh, yes. They don't warm their feet in that way. Something else must have meant oberek, or it might be the other way round. Oberek must mean something else. One of the other two definitions, and there it is! I don't know whether Chopin did do any, but he might well have done, but it is that kind of Polish dance. Let's have another word. Kinkin is the next word. Arthur, your turn.
This is quite simple. It's a method of laying bricks in a sort of herringbone crisscross pattern. And you want to know where they do this particularly. Come with me to Staffordshire, to the pottery works. Step inside a kiln. I mean, not when they've lit it up. Step inside a kiln, and looking round, you will see the kinkin, all the bricks laid in this sort of herringbone pattern.
Garden paths do it.
Well, garden paths if you wish, but I'm particularly
you to
dealing with
Staffordshire?
Staffordshire kilns. Pottery.
You won't believe this, but I was in a Staffordshire kiln about a month ago.
Were you?
Yes, I didn't notice any herringbones there.
Well, you should have looked more closely.
Except the managing director's soup.
Let us invite Michael now to define.
A kinkin is a beautiful species of Chinese pigeon, and it's bred especially for its pinky rose plumage. It's used as live decoration in the gardens of some Chinese houses.
Right, Sue.
Well, a kinkin is a smallish barrel, really, of no particular capacity or size. It used to be used in Scotland a lot. I don't think it's used much these days because now they've invented the bottle and the plastic container and that sort of thing, and the poor old kinkins got phased out. But it used to be used for provisions like vinegar or buttermilk or liquid bleach or whatever, and Scottish grocers used to buy them by the kinkinful.
Well, it's, they say that it's Chinese pigeon, pink pigeon it is, sort of a barrel, died out a bit these days, and bricks laid in a sort of herringbone pattern in Staffordshire, and possibly even in Egham. Right, your choice. You weren't listening.
Well, I drifted away a bit. But I don't live in Egham. I don't know.
No. I don't believe anyone does.
Egham is most grateful for both things, for
Yes.
being mentioned, and I don't live there. We think that kinkin as a barrel is trying to ruse us into confusing it with Pipkin and Tintin and things. Whether it's a Chinese pigeon or the other Chinese pigeon, the only pink pigeon is Mauritian pigeon, but we think that's what it is. Flash the card, lad.
Yeah, true. He did say it was a
get it
pink
over
pigeon.
with.
True or bluff? He owns up. Nothing. If it wasn't that, it has to be one of the other definitions. Which? Let's have it. It is the barrel. The little gesture, as it were, puts it in italics. It is indeed an old-fashioned name for a barrel in Scotland. Very interesting juncture. 4-all. Lovely time for another word on which everything hinges. Boret. Timothy's go.
Boret is an old Cornish word, and it is a flat, oblong raft used by Cornish fishermen in the Helston River for, first of all, sowing the young oysters and later reaping the grown-up ones. It serves a double purpose.
Mm-hmm. And now Victoria.
A boret is a sort of special short flute used by apprentice bagpipers to practice their fingering on, which doesn't inflate the bag, so it doesn't make any noise. So it's a sort of silent bagpipe.
Oh, what a wonderful idea.
Now, what does Frank say?
I don't know how hot you are on falconry. It's always been something of a closed book to me. I know words like muse and Muir is a falconry expression, come to think of it. But a boret is one of those. And if you'll take my word for it, it's a peculiar hen hawk with an elongated body and wings. Both wings, otherwise it would fly around in circles.
They say then that boret is a female hawk. It is a special Cornish raft, and it is a short flute to enable you to play the bagpipes silently. Michael Jayston to choose.
Half a tick.
I'd take a whole tick as chance.
Well, yes, Frank, this falconry and the hen hawk and the elongated body and wings, it'd have to have, wouldn't it, as you said? I'm going to discount that. It sounds too ridiculous. Cornish flat raft, fishermen and oysters. No, I'm going to go for Victoria, the apprentice, the silent flute.
The short flute, she said. True or bluff? No, no. Oh, no. Let us now hear who gave the true definition, or let us see at least who gave the true one. Yes. There it is indeed. You see, it's a female hawk. That's what a boar it is. And there, what with it having been 4-4, it now has to be 5-4, and the ones who scored that extra mark were Frank's team. So Frank has won yet again. Let's have a look at poor old Arthur and Co. Pipped on the post. Look at them. Oh, dear. Still, I don't suppose they mind very much. Back next time with more words that they couldn't give away. Till then, goodbye from Timothy West, Michael Jayston, Victoria Glendinning, Sue Cook, Frank Muir, and Arthur Marshall. Goodbye.